All right, guys, so we talked a little bit ago about the fact that Sadie Sink was rumored to be cast as Jean Grey, or at least the frontrunner for Jean Grey. And we talked about the implications there. And now the narrative continues to build. To be fair, right? To be fair, the person who reported that Sadie Sink was the frontrunner for Jean Grey was Jeff Snyder. And I've said this before on the channel, but in case you're new to the Access Blockbusters YouTube channel, which again, if you are, welcome, or the Access Blockbusters Pod, depending on where you're listening. But again, if you're new, welcome. But one thing that we talk about here a lot is the fact that we have to check the sources, right? We have to check the reputability of these sources and kind of figure out where we go from there. And so the interesting thing about, the movie industry, or at least the movie news industry, is the fact that there's a kind of a hierarchy, right? We look at Hollywood Reporter and Deadline and Variety as kind of the, set in stone, right? These are the things that, if it says it's going to happen this way, then we probably take that to the bank. And that's all fine. And then there are these reporters like Jeff Snyder or Christian Harloff or whatever, but I think Jeff Snyder is probably, a tier above Christian Harloff, for example, or John Campea, where Jeff Snyder's generally right, but he's gotten some things wrong, but he's generally right. So he's reported some things, and he was the one who reported that Sadie Sink was the front runner for Jean Grey. And then he is now reporting again that we have another MCU casting, and this time it's going to be none other than Kitty Pryde. So according to Jeff Snyder, we have Kitty Pryde being cast, who is going to be played by an actress named Julia Butters. Now, what's interesting about this, right, is that Julia Butters is 15 years old. And as an actress, I mean, even for an actress, right, because there are very young, actresses out there, but even for an actress, she is very, very young. That being said, she is also, apparently, because I haven't seen her in anything, very, very talented, because she has been in films like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and also The Gray Man, which I believe The Gray Man was directed by the Russo brothers, so there's some familiarity. By the way, we'll talk about in a separate segment, because I think this other piece of X-Men news that he drops about the production schedule is, I think, interesting enough to warrant its own segment. So we'll talk about that in just a second. But for those of you who are saying, or for those of you who've been seeing the rumors that, the Russo brothers are going to direct the X-Men films, well, one can't be true. Or both can't be true. Both the Russos directing the X-Men film and X-Men coming out in 2027, because the Russos are kind of busy with Avengers Secret Wars, and guys, the production schedules of movies are crazy. You cannot do that. Like, you cannot be directing two movies that come out 2 months apart unless you had directed them a long time ago back to back, right? It's just not possible. So no, they're not directing X-Men, or X-Men's not coming out in 2027. Both can't be true. Anyways, getting back to this news. So Jeff Snyder reiterates that, yes, Sadie Sink is the frontrunner for Jean Grey. Julia Butters is apparently cast, I guess, as Kitty Pryde, according to Jeff Snyder. And they also, this was a rumor that came out a while ago that I didn't really talk about because, honestly, it kind of skipped over me. But apparently also they have a frontrunner for Cyclops, who is an actor named Harris Dickinson, who was in the Iron Claw and Baby Girl. So again, I haven't seen anything that he's been in, but again, these are, what you're seeing here now is a theme. And look, we always have to say this with these reports. These could be completely false. How many times did we hear all the scoopers say, and again, I know Jeff Snyder is a little bit more reputable than your average scooper, or even your above average scooper, but how many times did we hear all these reports of Adam Driver confirmed as Reed Richards, Margot Robbie confirmed as Sue Storm, all these different castings that were going on here, and none of that happened. None of that happened. We'll talk about my thoughts on the actual casting of the Fantastic Four when we talk about the trailer in just a little bit, but guys, none of that happened. So this is fun, right? It's fun to say, and this could be true. Like, in a few months, we might officially get the cast of the new X-Men film at San Diego Comic-Con, and Harris Dickinson might come on stage, Sadie Sink might come on stage, and Julia Butters might come on stage, and we might be like, oh yeah, okay, solid, But it could be completely wrong. So just want to put that out there. Let's assume it's true. Let's assume this is true. It's continuing the theme that we talked about before. You're getting very talented actors and very talented actresses, right? These are, young actresses, and that's the second theme that we'll talk about in just a second, but these are young actors and actresses who have been in really good things. They're not casting complete unknowns, which is, again, totally fine if they do. I mean, for example, Iman Vellani, I think, did a great job as Ms. Marvel, and she had barely been in anything, right? So it's not like that in itself is a recipe for disaster, but I think that what you're seeing here is that the emphasis on the X-Men, the young X-Men, we got to get it right. We got to cast the most talented young actors and actresses out there. And these are, people who are going to be playing these roles for a long time, because the second point I think to notice from here is that these are young actors and actresses. I thought casting Sadie Sink, and again, the assumption is the X-Men aren't going to be happening for a little bit, although It's sooner than you think, according to Jeff Snyder, but we'll get to that in just a little bit. But again, still not for a little bit. So even if they're cast now, it's still going to be a couple years, right? But Sadie Sink being in her early 20s, and Harris Dickinson, I think, is a little bit older. I think he's in his late 20s, like 28 or so. So he'll be like 30, if the X-Men film comes out. But, I mean, Julia Butters, 15 years old. I don't think she's going to be an adult if the X-Men film is rumored to come out when it is going to come out. So, again, casting young, right, to have these characters hopefully be foundational for whatever comes next into the MCU, whether it's, the Avengers versus X-Men versus Eternals thing that just happened, Judgment Day, or if it's just Avengers versus X-Men, or if it's Apocalypse, or whatever is going to happen next in the MCU, Annihilation, who knows. But just being able to cast the next wave of the MCU, because again, Avengers, right, the Avengers typically, and we're not talking about young Avengers, we're not talking about champions, but the Avengers typically are made up of adults, even older adults, right? Like Tony Stark is not young in the comic books, and Robert Downey Jr. was not young when he played Iron Man for the first time. And by the time the Avengers Endgame ended, he was a dad, right? MCU Tony Stark was a dad. So, they were able to build a foundation for that, but it lasted about 10 years. These kids theoretically could be playing these characters for like 15 years if that's where the MCU wanted to go. So anyways, I just think it's interesting. We'll continue to monitor this, but file this away under interesting information, and we'll see where we go from there. What do you guys think? Do you think, first of all, have you seen anything that Julia Butters has been in, and what did you think about her in those roles? But more importantly, what do you think about just the general themes that have been coming out from these rumored, I have to say rumored and reported castings for the MCU's X-Men? Let me know in the comments down below.